Hey everyone, I'm Ian Dilly.
And I am Michael Sheehan. We are here to talk about yesterday's Ghent-Wevelgem.
It was one of the craziest Gent-Wevelgems we have seen in a long time. Let's get started with the women's race. It was an aggressive race, but seemed neutralized by this headwind that really stymied the racers coming into the finish, the final 35K from the top of the Kemmelberg.
Yeah, it was really quite breezy all day. The women had a ripping early part of the race out of Ypres. Tailwind pretty much made no group able to establish itself early on, and then as the race began to meander, some crosswinds factored in. There were separations going into the main climbs of the day, but as Ian said, it was a pretty oppressive headwind for the final 30-ish K all the way to the finish.
And now my pick before this race was European champion Marta Bastianelli of Team Virtue, and she tried her best to make me look very smart. She went on the attack throughout the race, just a searing climb up the Kemmelberg on the final pass, and then multiple counterattacks after. I mean, this is a rider that is on an incredible form and is just adding more depth to this women's field with the return of Marianne Vos, CCC Liv, obviously Sunweb, Corinne Rivera, and more teams just to challenge the dominance of Boels Dolman. Boels Dolman has not won a World Tour race yet this year. In fact, Marta Bastianelli was riding so well, we were joking that their director, Carmen Small, told another Virtue rider to go up the road on the run-in to Gent-Wevelgem, or in the run-in to Wevelgem, just so Bastianelli would stop attacking.
Yeah, that did seem to be the only thing that made Bastianelli stop. We saw her make moves with Cassianui Doma coming off of the Kemmelberg. I couldn't count the number of times she attacked. It was a really thrilling, aggressive run into the finish, but the headwind did set the racers up for a sprint.
And it was eventually Kirsten Wild with the win, her second World Tour win this week after taking Dretage de Panna. And she is a former she is a reigning world champion on the track, just a phenomenal rider, and we're talking about added depth to the women's field. You know, we said that Marta Bastianelli is one of the best sprinters in this women's World Tour. Kirsten Wild has, you know, emerged or maybe returned as a dominant force in the women's World Tour as well.
Yeah, the sprint that she unleashed into Wevelgem there was no answer to it. She was by far and away the fastest by a clean set of wheels. That was a dominant sprint. And we saw another pretty exciting run into Wevelgem in the men's race.
Yeah, this men's race opened up completely unpredictable. A breakaway forming just 200 kilometers into the race.
Yeah, when I say it was a pretty exciting run into Wevelgem for the men, that is probably the understatement of the century. The men's Ghent-Wevelgem race is definitely the most exciting race that I have seen so far in 2019. After E3, if you watched our show, we posed the question, how do you beat Deceuninck Quick-Step? And I think that the riders listened because they hit out hard and put Deceuninck Quick-Step on the back foot all day.
Yeah, we were saying that these teams, these star riders, were going to have to take more risks, and we saw much more opportunistic riding. I mean, Peter Sagan said that they didn't go into the race with the intention of forcing a selection of favorites containing Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, obviously Sagan and two of his Bora Hansgrohe teammates, a host of Trek riders, including John Degenkolb. But when the opportunity arrived, they went for it and they pushed the pace, and it really put Deceuninck on the back foot.
Yeah, this really emerged because of the crosswinds. Just 50 kilometers into the 250-kilometer long race, the riders rode along the North Sea, and that just created absolute havoc. And yeah, really the cream came to the top of the peloton. The favorites all found themselves at the front. There was an 18-man strong group, and I want to touch on Trek Segafredo real fast because Ian and I have been kind of talking amongst ourselves that Trek Segafredo has had an incredibly disappointing spring campaign. While Deceuninck Quick-Step seems to be driving away from every race, just partying on their bus, listening to Euro dance music, drinking champagne. The Trek Segafredo bus has been much more subdued. They completely missed the boat at E3, and I think that they had a stern talking to from their director because they placed Jasper Stuyven, John Degenkolb, and Edward Teuns in the lead group, and that put them in a really, really strong position.
Yeah, I mean, these are some of the biggest champions in the sport on Czech. John Degenkolb, who's won 2 monuments, Jasper Stuyven, who is, you know, a master of the classics. I don't know if they need a talking to by director. You know, these are guys who want to perform, who are dying to perform in these races. And, you know, I think we were talking about Degenkolb was a real standout. He was in that lead group of 18, got dropped on the first pass of the Kemmelberg, recovered as much as you can recover riding these circuits, and came back and finished second in the field sprint. I mean, just an incredible ride by him, and definitely, you know, good things to come for Trek, I think, taking a more aggressive approach to these cobbled classics.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes one success at a race to completely turn around the dynamic on a team, and I'm really excited to see what Trek has in store for us at the upcoming Dwars, Tour of Vlaanderen, and of course Tour of Flanders, because between John Degenkolb and Jasper Stuyven, when those guys are on form, they are as good as anyone else, and it is so good to see them back at the front of the race.
Let's get into this sprint by Alexander Kristoff, which was one of the most impressive sprints we have ever seen. We were both watching the finish on our phones after cheering for the race on the Kemmelberg and just saying, wow, wow, wow. I mean, yeah, it was incredible, the sprint he unleashed.
Yeah, so Kristoff, he took the sprint in Wevelgem, and my takeaway is Alexander Kristoff is just a hard man. He said in a post-race interview that when everybody else is tired, he tends to have a very good sprint. He just can grit his teeth in those late stages of a long, hard race. And Ghent-Wevelgem was one of the longest and hardest races we've seen. As Ian mentioned, we had the pleasure of being on the Kemmelberg for the riders' final pass. And you could kind of see it on TV, but being a couple feet away from the riders, the faces that every single one of the riders were pulling on this final pass of the Kemmelberg, they were in so much pain. The tolls of that 250-kilometer long race was very evident, and Alexander Kristoff just rode away with it in the sprint. An incredibly, incredibly strong ride by him.
Yeah, I mean, the racers themselves, Oliver Nason, you know, was talking about how these classics are incredibly hard, but, you know, this Gent-Wevelgem especially was a real bike race, a race where everybody ended completely emptied. Matteo Trentin summed it up pretty well by just saying that this race is effing hard. And I think that is the sort of the takeaway on why De Kooning lost this race. You know, we saw they were using up Gilbert, Stybar, everything they had to bring it back to a finish. And Viviani was there, but he went backwards in the sprint. It was just too hard for him.
Yeah, there was just too much action from start to finish. And that really is how you beat Quick-Step, is you just have to put them on the back foot and have them chasing the entire race. You know, even with 5 kilometers to go, there was an escape attempt. It had the likes of Sebastian Langeveld. It had Jasper Stuyven, who had been up the road in the move early on. It had Jack Bauer and Amund Janssen from Jumbo-Visma. This was a serious threat, and Gilbert had to bury himself to bring it back for Quick-Step. Every single helper that Viviani had in the final 10 kilometers went away to chase back this final 5-kilometer move.
Yeah, and let's get into some of these cyclocross stars who are, you know, not only emerging in the classics, but, you know, becoming pretty close to dominating these classics. Mathieu van der Poel with a 4th place finish yesterday after riding the early move with Sagan, Van Aert, all the other stars. You know, his first race in the World Tour. Van der Poel has just jumped onto the scene as someone else who's adding added depth, interest, excitement to these races.
Yeah, this is my favorite story of the classics of 2019, is the cyclocross stars that we are seeing emerge as the classics favorites. You know, Zdeněk Stybar, he's been on the scene with De Kooning Quick-Step for a couple years. He is already a favorite for the classics. Wout van Aert, he has come on board, and it's been really cool seeing Wout van Aert shadow Zdeněk Stybar around in the races. They seem to be on pretty much equal footing. Zdeněk Stybar, of course, won E3, followed by Wout van Aert. These are both former cyclocross world champions, and now we have the current cyclocross world champion who is up there in the mix as well. And watching Matthew van der Poel and Wout van Aert trade blows throughout Gent-Wevelgem yesterday. It's just like the best battles of the cyclocross season, except now we're getting to see it in a 6-hour-long spring classic.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to go from a 1-hour super intense race to a 250-kilometer race like Ghent-Wevelgem is super impressive, but I think it also just speaks to sort of the old school nature of these racers and the return of riders who are racing a year-round schedule. I mean, both Van der Poel and Van Aert said that they have no intention on giving up cyclocross, so they might need to step back a little bit if they want to start racing some of the even earlier races in the year, but we're getting to watch these guys race 12 months out of the year, and it's truly phenomenal. Let's get into what we're going to see on Wednesday with Dwars, Vlaanderen. I mean, for me, this is kind of a bonus race. It is a World Tour event. It happens on Wednesday. It's going to have many of the same classic stars we've been watching all week, and yeah, it's going to tell us a little bit more about what we're going to see in Flanders on Sunday.
Yeah, last year's edition was won by Yves Lampaert of De Koning Quick-Step. Quick-Step is probably going to have a very strong team here because they are such a Belgian-based team. They are certainly going to be looking to get back into their rhythm before the big race Tour of Flanders on Sunday. But that is not to say that they will not be met with some other classic stars looking to fine-tune their form ahead of Sunday.
Yeah, at only 180 kilometers long, Dwars Vlaanderen is one of the shorter races. I think it only takes them like 4 hours, so it's just like a fun, exciting race, and we're looking forward to watching it. We will actually be there on Wednesday, so tune in for our recap show.
Yeah, please do tune in Dwars Vlaanderen this coming week. We will be providing coverage, and the big show, Tour of Flanders, will be on Flobikes on Sunday.
See you then.